Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Ukraine says it's open to direct talks but wants Russia to submit peace terms first as deadly strikes continue. Trump warns Putin has 2 weeks to show he's serious or face a different response. Hungry crowds break into a UN food warehouse in central Gaza with 2 reported dead and several injured as aid shortages spark desperation. The WFP warns conditions have spiraled out of control amid blockades, looting and a deepening humanitarian collapse. Manila says Beijing has no right to object to its lawful operations in the South China Sea, rejecting China's claims of sovereignty over the Spratly Islands. Tensions flare as both nations trade sharp words over maritime rights. After a US court blocks most of Trump's sweeping tariffs, China calls on Washington to fully cancel the wrongful measures. Beijing says the move would reflect global and domestic opposition to unilateral trade actions. Elon Musk steps down as a special government employee after helping lead Trump's push to shrink federal bureaucracy. He thanks Trump for the chance to reduce wasteful spending and says the Doge mission will continue. South Koreans turn out in record numbers for early voting ahead of next week's snap presidential election. Frontrunner Lee Jae-myung casts his ballot as the nation seeks stability after Yoon Suk-yeol's failed martial law attempt. Israel announces plans for 22 new settlements in the occupied West Bank, igniting global criticism amid escalating tensions over the war in Gaza. The move risks further isolation on the world stage. Sudan's health ministry says a deadly cholera outbreak has claimed 70 lives in just 2 days in the capital. The city struggles to contain the spread amid ongoing conflict and collapsing health services. Now our top story today. In a major development on the Russia-Ukraine war, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has announced that Moscow is ready for a second round of direct talks with Ukraine. The proposed date is June the 2nd, but with Istanbul again set to host. He briefed US Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Moscow's preparations for direct talks with Ukraine. Lavrov added that Russia has prepared a detailed peace memorandum addressing the root causes of the conflict. However, Russia insists the document will only be shared with Ukraine, rejecting any US or third-party mediation in the exchange. On the other hand, Kiev says it's open to negotiations but wants Moscow's peace terms in advance. Ukraine's defense minister says they're still waiting to receive Russia's proposal ahead of the scheduled meeting. Ukraine has not yet confirmed its participation in the proposed June the 2nd talks in Istanbul. This comes as Russia says it shot down 48 Ukrainian drones overnight. With air defenses intercepted UAVs across 7 regions, including Moscow. 3 drones targeted the capital, forcing temporary airport closures. No casualties were reported, however. Debris fell near homes in Moscow. Flight restrictions in Vnukovo and Kaluga airports have now been lifted. We move over to the Middle East now, where Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 13 Palestinians overnight in Gaza, according to local hospitals. Among the dead, 4 were killed in a strike on a car in Gaza City and 8 others in a home in Jabalia. Gazan hospital officials have also confirmed 4 people were killed when a United Nations food warehouse was stormed. The World Food Programme is now calling for urgent aid to prevent starvation. Meanwhile, Israel's far-right finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, has announced the establishment of 22 new settlements in the occupied West Bank, a move widely condemned under international law. On the diplomatic front, however, European nations such as Ireland, Norway, Spain and Slovenia have released a joint statement. This has been done to reaffirm their commitment for the implementation of a two-state solution. We're now joined by Joshua Barnes, anchor and correspondent, to discuss this in further details. Joshua, thank you very much for joining us. We have, over the past couple of days, we have seen chaotic scenes at these aid distribution points led by a private company team with the US and Israel teaming up. What further details can you give us on the ongoing aid distribution by the GHF in Gaza?
Yes, well, Thomas, of course, the situation in Gaza is a tricky one, and that's putting it lightly. Of course, an 11-week aid blockade has led to famine and starvation, according to several humanitarian groups that are working within the Gaza enclave. This, of course, has led to worrying situations for people, but optimism over these aid deliveries. Now, the amount of aid coming in has been a positive sign, but many of these agencies within Gaza are saying that it is just a drop in the ocean. And of course, following the aid coming in now, this from the UN and also, as you've mentioned, from a US-backed group who are working to distribute aid across the Strip, has seen scenes of chaos, scenes of desperation, people that are starving with children at home. The situation can't be understated within Gaza if we believe the reports that the humanitarian agencies are releasing, and it has led to deaths. The storming of a UN storage facility, a chaotic scene in which people are fighting almost for their lives at this point. The aid that's coming in is not enough, and that has led to desperation, and these scenes causing deaths is something that these groups want to avoid, but this is, of course, the start of a longer plan for US aid distribution, US-backed aid distribution, and the situation will hopefully improve for those living in Gaza. But as it stands, chaotic scenes continuing and can be expected to continue as these aid trucks go in. There are fears over this aid getting into the hands of Hamas, something which Israel has been strong in talking about and raising as an issue. Of course, Hamas themselves are living in the enclave and they're dealing with the same issues as the civilians, and famine, hunger, starvation, all topics that have been raised by humanitarian groups. The Israeli and US organisations and administrations want to make sure that this aid goes to those civilians in need.
Joshua, I want to move over to the diplomatic front now. We've now seen rising pressure on Israel, including from that of the UK, France and Canada. Now we have Ireland, Norway, Spain and Slovenia all releasing a joint statement together. We've also obviously seen this announcement of 22 new settlements in the occupied West Bank. What can you tell us about this growing international pressure on the Israeli state?
Well, yes, Thomas, pressure has ramped up. There has been a clear shift from governments that previously have been aligned with Israel and supporting them in their mission to get hostages returned. But this has been a slow shift that has come since the resumption of fighting following the first phase of a ceasefire deal. That, of course, has now ended. A resumption of Israeli military action in Gaza has seen scenes that we saw before that ceasefire was agreed. Displacements of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, deadly strikes being reported by local health officials on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times in a day. To give you an understanding of the level of strikes, in recent days the IDF said that they hit 200 separate sites through ground and air offensives in a 48-hour period. So this is an extremely war-torn area. The humanitarian aspect that we spoke about with aid is something that has been raised by global leaders, and there is now a push towards a potential two-state solution and an end to the conflict. I want to flag some news that we had overnight. On the diplomatic front, of course, Steve Witkoff, who has had this proposal, this plan for a partial hostage release, which would lead to a potential multiple dozen-day ceasefire, potentially 42, maybe 50. Hamas said that they'd agreed to one of these deals, which would see a 70-day truce in exchange for around 10 hostages. We know Steve Witkoff has now released and presented a new plan. Details on that will come soon, and it will be in a similar framework to his previous 42-day ceasefire deal for around 10 hostages. This pressure from global leaders will only make the talks and calls for a ceasefire stronger. I think pressure on the Israeli government to acknowledge what's happening, but also looking towards a solution. Benjamin Netanyahu has made himself clear since the resumption of IDF action within the Gaza enclave. He's been talking about taking full control of Gaza. His aim is to eradicate Hamas from Gaza. He wants them disbanded, he wants them disarmed, and he wants a return of all hostages. This is the golden area in which negotiation teams, including Qatar, Egypt and other countries as well, are working towards, but at the minute there is somewhat of an impasse. The pressure from global leaders will put that pressure on to Israel and their key ally, the United States, as well.
Joshua Barnes, thank you very much for joining us on the programme. We now move over to the United States. And diplomatically, where the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning has said, as a matter of principle, I would like to reiterate that there will be no winners in a trade war, which is also not conducive to the world. This warning comes after US President Donald Trump vowed to impose new tariffs on Chinese imports. The warning comes as effect of US trade policies are being felt globally, most notably at European ports. Severe congestion is now impacting major European ports, including Antwerp to Bruges, as a result of US tariff decisions and rising geopolitical tensions. Jacques Windermere, CEO of the Port of Antwerp-Bruges in Belgium, said average ship waiting times have climbed from 32 hours at the end of March to 44 hours by mid-May, and the congestion is being fueled in part by a surge in cargo volume. After the suspension of additional US tariffs on China, companies rushed to move goods before new trade measures could be imposed, causing shipping delays across several European ports. We stay in the United States. The US plans to aggressively revoke visas for Chinese students linked to the Chinese Communist Party or studying in sensitive fields, according to the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. This move aims to address national security concerns and rebalance the US-China relationship. In response, China's foreign ministry condemned the decision, labeling it an outright political persecution and racial discrimination. Spokesperson Mao Ning emphasized that revocations violate the rights of Chinese students and disrupt cultural exchanges. China has lodged formal representations with the US government, urging a reversal of the policy.
美方以意识形态和国家安全为借口，无理取消中国留学生签证，严重损害中国留学生的合法权益，干扰两国正常人文交流。中方对此坚决反对，已向美方提出交涉。美方这一政治性、歧视性做法，戳穿了美国一贯标榜的所谓自由开放谎言，只会进一步损害美国的自身国际形象和国家信誉。
These moves come amid escalating scrutiny of US universities tied to China. Harvard is already facing multiple federal investigations, a funding freeze and a court battle over its ability to enroll foreign students. A judge has temporarily blocked a federal ban on Harvard's student visa program. We now move over to the Indo-Pacific, where South Korea's snap presidential election is underway, triggered by months of political turmoil and a failed attempt by former President Yoon Suk-yeol to impose martial law. Three major candidates, Lee Jae-myung, Kim Moon-soo and Lee Jun-seok cast their ballots early today. Let's listen in to what the three leading candidates at the election had to say.
참여하셔서 이 잘못된 결과를 빚어낸 내란 세력에 대해서 엄중하게 강력하게 심판해 주시기를 바랍니다.
만약 안 해버리면 전체 투표율이 낮아지기 때문에 상당히 문제가 있고 우리가 불리해지기 때문에 일단은 제가 먼저 투표를 한 겁니다.
정치 교체, 세대 교체, 시대 교체를 이뤄내겠다는 마음으로 선거에 임하고 있습니다.
The Election Commission says over 3 million people, about 7% of all eligible voters, turned out by 11 a.m. local time, marking a record high for this stage. Candidates from both sides of the political spectrum, Liberal and Conservative, have urged citizens to vote, calling it a crucial time to stabilise the country. South Korea's 44 million voters, have 2 days of early voting wrapping up on the 30th of May before the final ballot on June the 3rd. We're now joined by Dr. Sanjay Kumar, who's a journalist at the Korea Herald, and he's located in the South Korean capital. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Kumar. How important is this election in South Korea's history? We've obviously seen, as many put it, a political crisis in South Korea currently. How important is this election to the people and to the country's future?
Almost now we can see that the whole Koreans, entire Koreans are looking united to select a new government, and the mandate is going to be very likely against the political turmoil that happened due to the martial law and the political crisis that happened. So people here, the mandate here is very clear, and it is really affecting the conservative side a lot, because Lee Jae-myung from the Democratic Party, he is like front runner, you can say that, and the mood is very much towards the Democratic Party. So we can say that the mandate cutting across different age groups and gender, now they are coming towards the Democratic Party. So the mood is here like that, and until half an hour ago, I think it was 17.51% early voting already has been done, and we are seeing also in Korea a surge in the political mood and interest in the election. Yeah, so we can say that people are not very happy with the conservative side after a few presidential debates too. So this is a clear message. Of course, it is going to be challenging for the newly elected, newly incumbent president also. Although it is, we cannot say the results, but it is challenging for the next president also to address the economic issues, then this Trump's tariff issues, and there are some, like Korea's declining birth rate, and you have to.
Yes, of course.
They have to revive the economy. So these all challenges are there, and on the other side, there are some security aspects always in the Korean Peninsula because of the North Korean threat always. So it is not going to be an easy period for the next president as well, because the political polarization has happened here as well. And no matter people were not happy with President Yoon, but they are not ready to accept any kind of passive economic policy or the security policy under the new administration. So we have to see.
Yes, Dr. Kumar, obviously during the impeachment trial of Yoon Suk-yeol, we saw mass protests on each side, both supporting and both against the president, Yoon Suk-yeol, as we've discussed previously. How divided is South Korean political society? Do you see this election as a sort of reset, or is it deepening existing divides?
There is that divide still exists, in Korea because of the Gyeongsang-do and Honam they call it. Like there had been a like regional political divide, but that divide is still visible, and we will see because it is early voting right now. So we will see after June 3 when the main elections will be finished, and we can see the results. There is a divide, but that divide has not been, like this year we can say that this divide is not going to play a key role, because the candidates who are in the center, they have not been able to galvanize the vote on the basis of region or gender. So this has been, this has been the situation. Earlier, elections, the regional divide, as well as gender divide, like a slight gender divide, as well as generational divide was clearly visible. This time, I think generational divide would be there, of course, but it is not going to affect like the way it did in earlier elections in Korea. So that is the reason why in Korea the election is looking very one-sided, we can say, because people from the conservative side, they of course they are going to vote to their favorite candidate, but they are not very active. When the political mood is galvanized, it really matters when you have moral grounds to vote in someone's support actively. So this is not visible this time in the conservative side. Still, we have to see a couple of days. We may see like that polarization may help the conservative side as well, but it is not going to be decisive according to the reports, the surveys, and as well as the people that we are talking to. Yeah.
Dr. Sanjay Kumar, pleasure having you on the program. Thank you for your insight. We now move over to Indonesia, where French President Emmanuel Macron visited the country today, where he awarded President Prabowo Subianto the Grand Cross of the Legion of Honor. This is France's highest civilian and military award. The ceremony took place at a military academy in Magelang, Central Java. Macron and Prabowo attended a military parade and toured the facility together. Later, Macron visited the world's largest Buddhist temple, Borobudur, in Yogyakarta. The 9th century temple is a major cultural landmark. Macron is on a Southeast Asia tour and will next travel to Singapore. Before leaving, Macron is expected to deliver a speech on cultural ties between France and Indonesia. The visit also strengthens defence and trade cooperation between the two nations. This marks a significant step in boosting diplomatic relations. We stay in the region once again, where a South Korean Navy patrol plane crashed during a training flight earlier today in the southeastern city of Pohang. The aircraft, a P-3C, went down shortly after taking off from its base at 1:43 local time. 4 crew members were on board, and at this hour, the Navy says it's still trying to confirm their condition. Crews haven't reported any civilian casualties on the ground. The plane crashed on a wooded hillside near an apartment complex, sparking a fire that drew a swift response from emergency services. Firefighters rushed to the scene, and residents nearby reported seeing the aircraft fall from the sky before flames broke out. Pohang's Nambu police confirmed the crash involved a Navy aircraft, but they haven't released any details yet about possible injuries or fatalities. This tragedy comes just months after one of the most deadly aviation accidents in South Korean history. Back in December, a Jeju air passenger plane crashed at Muan International Airport, killing 179 of the 181 people on board. Authorities continue to investigate the cause of the plane crash and are working urgently to locate and assist the missing crew. We move on once again. Japan may use US defense equipment purchases as leverage in ongoing tariff talks with Washington. Tariff negotiator Akazawa said defense spending could be part of a broader package to win US concessions, including shipbuilding ties, auto standards revisions, and boosted US farm imports. Akazawa will meet US Treasury Scott Bessent on May the 30th. with Japan facing a 24% tariff starting in July if no deal is reached. The discussions will cover trade expansion, economic security, and non-tariff barriers. Defense purchases, including potential fighter jet deals, were raised in a recent call between President Trump and Prime Minister Shiba. Tokyo is also pushing for an end to both reciprocal and industry-specific tariffs, particularly on autos. The currency issue has been shelved for now, with both sides agreeing that the dollar-yen rate reflects economic fundamentals. We now move on once again. In a significant move ahead, Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni will host French President Emmanuel Macron in Rome on June the 3rd. Meloni's office confirmed the meeting, saying the two leaders will discuss bilateral European and international issues, though no details were given. This comes amid a notably frosty relationship between the two in the recent past. Meloni, a far-right nationalist who swept to power, has consistently clashed with Macron over migration and EU policy. Meanwhile, this meeting is widely seen as a positive step towards strengthening France and Italy ties. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.